this feeling of rage that would start in your stomach and then just travel all the way through your body. And I am still trying to figure out what is ADHD, what is autism, and what is actually just James. I've learned more about myself in the last year than I could have ever imagined, because I'd realised at this point that I was poorly, and anxiety is an illness.
Welcome everyone. We're here in partnership with Northeast Autism Society, and today we've got my good friend James Henderson. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Great to have you here. Why don't you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself? Give us a bit of background.
Well, let's start with a really nice, easy question then.
Of course, so easy.
So I'm 33-year-old, Chief of Staff for Direct Business Group. I have lived my entire life with autism and only found out last year.
I love that. What was your views of autism or the mental health side of things and prior towards your diagnosis? Because I think it's becoming quite prevalent, the late diagnoses, or at least that's how I've seen it. I know for me personally, my views changed dramatically through my teenage years, through to my 20s, to when I got diagnosed with ADHD. So I imagine it was probably pretty similar for you.
Yeah, I think so. I think ADHD when I was a kid was just the naughty people in the class who, were isolated out.
Not I agree with that.
And all ADHD was for me at that time was hyper kids. And I suppose we'll have to edit this bit out because I'm having an ADHD moment now.
Don't worry about it. No, that's the whole point of it.
So my experience of mental health before now was very negative. People who had anxiety, I was just get a grip.
They had no time
How
for
can
it.
you possibly not be able to get out of bed? You're just born idle. Get a grip. Antidepressants, it's just a cop out.
Yeah.
You just don't want to go to work.
Yeah.
And that didn't change for me until probably about 2 years ago.
What changed it?
Well, I'll take you back to another point that's really prevalent just before that moment. Right. Sophie had told me about a celebrity who had been diagnosed with, was it ADHD or autism? Autism. At a similar age that I was. Yeah. And I said, what a load of rubbish. Why on earth does this person want to be diagnosed with autism at this age? It's going to make no difference. Really? It's purely just a publicity campaign. Yeah. Let's get some followers on TikTok.
Yeah, I get that.
And then I was the exact same age when I got diagnosed. Yeah. And my God, has it changed my life. Yeah. So I totally get it now. Yeah. And what was your question before I went off on that tangent?
So it was focused around sort of your views of mental health.
Yeah.
Because I relate to that.
Oh, sorry, you asked me when it changed.
Yeah. When did it change from what you say is negative to, I'm assuming, how you feel now?
Yeah. So I think the first step for me was, it was the moment on Instagram. So there was an awareness day campaign, a month, whatever it was. And somebody had symptoms of anxiety and possibly other condition, but anxiety is the one that was prevalent to me. And it described this feeling of rage that would start in your stomach and then just travel all the way through your body. And I wasn't violent, but I was just so irritated. Everything was just so annoying. And I just put that down to being a miserable old git, to be quite frank. I just thought, this is me. So that was the first moment I thought, oh, wow, there's something here. Yeah. I can do something about this. And I don't know if I did it immediately. So my first real experience of any kind of therapy was CBT, NHS CBT, over the telephone. Just did nothing for me at all. I just didn't really understand what the hell it was or what the purpose of it was. So that didn't last very long.
So you saw that thing on Instagram?
Yeah.
And then what was the process of going towards the CBT?
I mean, you've got absolutely no chance of me being able to pull that out of my head, Paul. No.
So
ADHD means that information that I don't need anymore is gone.
Oh, I know that. It's 100%. So you saw these things on Instagram, and you thought, right, there's something to this.
I don't know if we spoke about it, Soph?
I can't really remember exactly. I don't know.
No, I can't either. So I was going through a really difficult time professionally. So actually, it'll have been 3 years ago. I'd left a previous employer that I'd been to for a long time, and there was a lot of trauma. So there's a word that people don't really understand. And trauma isn't about bleeding or, being beat up or, trauma happens, mental trauma happens to us without us even realising.
Yes, I agree.
So there was a lot that was going on at that time that, looking back, I was in a really bad place mentally. And then I think me and Soph had a little bust up as well around that time as well. We weren't bust up for very long. Maybe it was a couple of weeks, but it was just another problem, So that's why I signed up the CBT. And a lot of it was linked to an employment tribunal.
Oh, really?
And then that tribunal finished in November, and I was still going through this CBT, and then we were getting into December, and I was just like, what's the bloody point now? Like, it's over.
Yeah.
I'm really not interested in talking to this woman who, granted is doing her best down the phone, but it's just not resonating for me at all. Yeah. So I just told her I was fine. It's fine. I'll just crack on now. I'm better. I'm cured. Yeah. Which obviously I wasn't. So then I think.
Do you think you knew at this point that there was something else there?
No. I've always had a little bit of a niggle, I think. People would often say, oh, you're definitely autistic, and things like that.
We had that conversation quite a lot. Like, not in a, it sounds bad, but in a bit of a jokey way.
Yeah.
We said it quite a bit. You even said it yourself.
Yeah, but we'll get onto that because that comes next. Yeah. We'll do this in time order, chronological, because that makes sense. So probably about 6 months after that, I first referred through NHS talking therapies. Can you remember why I did it? What happened? Had we had another bust up? Don't know.
You didn't tell me at first. You didn't want me to know.
Okay. So I think anxiety, on another tangent, the biggest impact it had on my life was definitely personal life at home with Soph.
Yeah.
I didn't have any kids at the time, did we? Was Lila born?
No.
Yeah. So Soph moved in with me at the beginning of COVID, and that was really, Sophie's probably the only person that I've lived with long term other than immediate family. So I think a lot of traits, certainly around anxiety and ADHD and autism, started to be more prevalent because there was somebody else there. Yeah, whereas before it was just me and my dog. So he had no qualms with me having anxiety at all.
Not that you could tell you.
No. Now you've said that, actually, he did spend a lot of time away from me. So I self-referred to talking therapies on the NHS, which granted the NHS is under strain and isn't doing all that it needs to do, but that was a fairly straightforward process. You go online, you fill in a form, and within 4 weeks I had an appointment. And you go and see the same person for 6 weeks. Okay. I saw a lady called Claire who was probably the second life-changing moment for me. So the Instagram moment is, I've got something wrong. Claire was the first person that I spoke to. I thought, actually, there's something in this. Yeah. Something could happen. There were just things that she spoke about that really resonated with me. And without realising, she was the first person who let me understand perspective. Okay. And that will come back to perspective as well. Okay, so I ask you very important. Okay. Well, so then there's a journey on from there.
Cool.
So I saw Claire for 6 weeks and then discharged. So you have to be discharged from the service with the NHS after that. And I do kind of understand that, not just from a demand, but also it's important for you to go and try what you've been talking about, put into practice. Yeah. So it is a bit like, chuck them in the deep end, I suppose.
No, I get that.
And I think it'll certainly work for some people. So don't knock it. Don't think I'm not going to go just because I'll only get 6 weeks. I mean, 6 weeks is a hell of a lot better than nothing at all. So go and see. Yeah, go and talk to somebody. So then discharged, got on with life. And then I had a real, what Sophie and I had probably our biggest bust up ever. We were under a lot of strain at the time. We'd sold our house. We were living with Soph's parents. We had Lila at this time. 2 dogs.
Yeah, that sounds hectic.
Yeah, work and, all this going on in my head that I didn't even know about. So I referred again, talking therapies.
Fair play to you for doing that, by the way.
Yeah, but I want to tell you about this one because it didn't work at all.
Yeah.
Different person, different place. Just not for me.
Yeah.
I just got nothing out of going and talking to this person at all. Not because they were a lovely person, just no connection. And it is so bloody important that people who go and look for therapy or any kind of mental health support, realize the importance in the relationship with that person.
I couldn't agree more.
If the first person you see isn't for you, don't give up. If my second counsellor had been my first, I would have given up.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
No, I think that's a really good point. You know, I've had my fair share of therapists, counsellors, and I suppose I've been quite fortunate with the ones I had, but also I had one in particular where I knew from the first session that the person wasn't right for me.
Yeah.
But I went for another, I think probably 8 to 10 weeks.
Okay.
Until I eventually went, I'm not going to go there anymore. So I agree. I think it's being true with yourself about that and working out whether the person's right for you.
Yeah, and that's probably neurodivergent itself, the inability to leave and stop that process.
100%. I think it's also routine as well.
Someone's got to do it for you.
Yeah, and that's in the routine for me. So that's in the diary. That's happening. You know?
Yeah. And once it stops, it's very hard to then make it start again. So if you stop seeing that therapist, now I've got to.
If I miss one session, probably not going back.
Yeah, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how it's for me. Or that depends on the relationship.
Yeah.
If the relationship's strong, then there's a high chance I'll go back. But I've had it in the past where I've missed one session. I might have booked another one, but the routine's gone.
So that's definitely happened to me with things other than therapy.
Yeah.
Especially as a kid. Like I joined every club going. And it got to the point where my mum refused to buy me any of the uniforms or any of the equipment anymore. Like, James, you can continue to go. I can remember specifically Sea Scouts going. So you got 2 weeks free. 2 weeks free. Yeah. And everybody had the uniform, and you saluting and whatever else you do at Sea Scouts.
Knots and stuff.
And I was like, I need the uniform. Like, I'm standing there without uniform, Mum. I look like an absolute fool. And so every week I'll go in and I need this uniform, Mum. And then after the second week, I'll have been 9-year-old because I got my first dog, Holly, a little Lakeland Terrier that I'd wanted my entire life. And never went back to Sea Scouts again because I had a dog to look after now. And that was just how easy it was.
No, I get that.
And everything was like that. Absolutely everything. Hey ho.
So as you were growing up, when was the first time someone brought up or maybe questioned that maybe you had ADHD or
I don't
autism?
think that's ever happened, mate, really, until I was an adult. Yeah. I mean, people have probably said it, but not
maybe
in
not
a way that I've...
in a way of, we want to help you, you might have this.
Definitely not.
No.
Definitely not.
No.
But looking back, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I used to spend my dinners at school, certainly primary school, stood holding the dinner lady's hand. I didn't fit in anywhere.
Yeah.
I wasn't a footballer.
Yeah.
And I didn't even fit in with the kids who weren't footballers. They were into things that I just didn't understand.
See, on that point then, that's for me, what I was sort of asking earlier was when you got to the point where, maybe not when you had the diagnosis, but when it was getting towards you having some maybe clarity on, I think this is
I remember the moment.
Did that, because for me, I remember when I got my ADHD diagnosis, it was a big weight lifted off me. It was a justification for a lot of my traits, which were seen previously, probably by me and probably by a lot of other people, as very negative character traits.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. ADHD wardrobe, there's a prime example. I cannot put clothes away in a wardrobe. That's not because I'm lazy, it's because I've got ADHD.
Is that an ADHD thing?
Yeah, mate.
So my whole spare room is just piled up with my clean clothes.
The ADHD wardrobe is a thing.
Right.
We'll Google that to make sure, but I'm 99% certain it is.
Oh, yeah, that now. I like that. Okay.
Have you heard of that, Julie? No? Fair.
Yeah.
There's another thing. So that's right. We've just there clicked on a new ADHD. I keep saying the word fair and it's driving. I've never said it before in my life. And I went out for dinner with one of our colleagues last Wednesday and I started saying it in the conversation. I haven't stopped saying it since. It's driving me mad.
What is that? So is that another ADHD thing?
I think so. I'm putting it down to
pick
ADHD.
up on people's dialects, everything.
Yeah, I do that when I'm on holiday.
Yeah.
And then don't talk in their accent.
Yeah.
But it's awful.
Yeah, it's bad, isn't it? Yeah, we're funny or something.
Yeah, but is it autism or ADHD where you've got hypersenses? Or is it both?
It might be both, but definitely autism.
Yeah.
You can either be under or hypersensitive.
So what I do pick up on is different changes in people's voice quite a lot. So, accent you're talking about there is probably a bad example. But yeah, you pick up on all kinds of weird and wonderful things.
I agree.
And I do mimic people.
Agree. Yeah.
But that's autism, and that must be masking. Do you think?
It could
possibly.
It could be part and parcel of that.
Yeah. So I think it's prudent to point out at this point that as part of ADHD and autism, I am still trying to figure out what is what. and what is ADHD, what is autism, and what is actually just James.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point though, isn't it? Because I guess do you think you'll ever probably work that out? Might get a bit more clarity on it.
I think I've learned more about myself in the last year than I could have ever imagined.
In what way?
Well, from diagnosis, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. And just how I think differently. So the first moment that I ever realised that we think differently is in people, is that not everybody has an internal monologue. And I just assumed that everybody thinks by talking to themselves in their head. But apparently not.
That's not a thing?
I've got no idea how else you would possibly think. But
is that not a thing? Everyone does that? Am I having that moment right now?
Yeah, I think so, mate.
I thought everyone did that.
Yeah. And that's from a clinical psychologist, so I'm going to take a word for it.
Okay, yeah, well, we probably should. They'll probably know more than we do.
Yeah, well, she definitely knows more than we do. So yeah, after the second bout of counselling that didn't really work, I think at this point, because of the relationship I had with Claire, I recognised the value in therapy, in counselling, actually. And it was counselling that I was thinking, this is what I need to, continue. So gratefully, I got access through work to a psychological therapist called Dr. Jennifer Cottam, who's an absolutely wonderful lady who deserves a shout out and has helped in this podcast. I remember my first appointment with Jen, and she was telling me that she's not a counsellor. And I can remember sitting thinking, what is this woman talking? I haven't got a clue, we do psychological therapy. What the bloody hell psychological therapy? It just didn't make any sense to me, but, persevered. I'm in the process now.
Exactly. You're in.
And we were probably 4 or 5 sessions in, maybe. And I was there for anxiety. That's what I was there for. Because I'd realised at this point that I was poorly. And anxiety is an illness in the same way that having a cold is an illness. So I wanted to get better. Because I could remember what life was like before anxiety was what it was at that point.
Okay, that's interesting.
I can remember being happy and, being sociable.
Can you?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm there now.
Yeah.
I'm there again. Like, I feel the best I've ever felt.
I love that, mate. That's good to hear.
Which is why I want to do this, because I want to give other people that opportunity. Yeah. So I started seeing Jen, and she was the first person who, I've just banged the table, sorry.
For about the last 5 minutes, if I'm honest.
Sorry guys. Hopefully AI will be able to edit that out, but if not, tough. Jen was the first person to mention autism to me.
Okay.
And I cried.
Really?
It was the first time that my life had made any sense.
No, I love that.
In like a 3 or 4 minute conversation with her, just explaining what autism was, because I'd never give it any consideration. I didn't have a clue what autism was, not at all. People just say, "Oh, you're on the spectrum. You're definitely autistic." And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, you just brush it off. And then I had like I was saying earlier with Soph, I didn't care. I was 32-year-old. What difference is it going to make in my life now if I have autism?
Very true.
And then I got diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and my God, did my life change very quickly.
Really quickly.
Very quickly. So then...
what was the first big change you saw when you got that diagnosis?
Oh.
I got to try and just get little thoughts from you before you move on to the next things. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Yes. With when you said earlier about autistic masking, Jen told you about that really early on and gave you a book about it. And straight away you were like noticing yourself doing that every day. Like you'd come in from work and start actually talking about your day. Whereas before you were like, nah, work's like separate. And you said that was masking, because at work you would be like masking the autism. And then you'd come home and just be totally different around me. And then when you realised you were doing that, you completely stopped.
Did I really?
Yeah, straight away.
Okay, because I don't recognise the change. I do now, but not at the time.
Yeah, straight away.
You can't pinpoint the change.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And masking still something. Sorry?
As soon as she properly taught you about what masking was.
Yeah, you say that, Soph, right? We haven't. So me and Jen have had a conversation about masking, and she gave me that book. You've read more of that book than me, because I have not read any of it.
You knew what it was. You told me what it was.
Oh, no, I told you what it was, just from a conversation that I've had with Jen. But my ADHD means that... So I've either got to do it now
Yeah.
Or I've got to wait until that moment that I remember it in the future and do it then. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen.
So true.
So with ADHD, there is either now or later.
Yeah.
And that later will only happen if you're ready for it to happen at that point. So that's why I've just got to get stuff done now.
Yep, I agree. So you're doing 10 things at once.
Yeah. Or I'm just not moving on until this is done.
Yeah.
And if I have to drive my car from Sunderland to Cornwall to finish what I'm doing, then that is what I'm doing. Because I can't move on to the next thing until it's finished.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So then I'm really grateful that I got to benefit from private healthcare for my diagnosis through work. I still wouldn't be anywhere near diagnosis with the NHS, and that's something that we've got to be aware of. So I think there's two reasons why autism is and neurodiversity and probably mental health is a problem generally, and it's the first one is awareness. We don't talk about it. If I was to have a heart attack right now, you'd know I was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
If I was having a stroke, if I had a broken leg, if I had a physical ailment of some sort, there has definitely been a campaign at some point telling you what symptoms to look out for.
Very true.
That doesn't exist in the world of mental health, autism or ADHD. There are no TV ad campaigns saying this is what an autistic person is experiencing or feeling. So I think that's the first problem.
Yep.
But then the second problem is we just don't have the capacity to treat everybody. So how do you fix that? We can do all this work at the front like we're doing right now, trying to raise awareness, but we have to be conscious about the fact we don't want thousands of people now sitting there thinking, I've got something, and they've got no one to turn to and find out.
No, I agree. I wouldn't even know where to begin with what the solution is.
That would just make things so much worse. Can you imagine if you're sitting there with ADHD, undiagnosed ADHD, you've never thought about it before, and now you're like, okay, so I think I have ADHD, but I literally can't talk to anybody about it.
Well, if you've seen that, or you've seen there was the big medication shortage, wasn't there, not that long ago?
Yeah, Elvin's. So that's one of the drugs that I'm on for ADHD. It's a really powerful drug, and you have to go through a lot of processes to get it. So my GP will not prescribe me it.
Oh, really?
I see a psychiatrist, and once I'm on a stabilised dose, they can then talk to my GP and say, "Are you happy to take this guy on under your care?" But the GP can say no. So they're in the family of crystal meth, like it's a serious drug.
I mean, that's a serious one, that.
Yeah. But the impact it has is phenomenal.
Oh, what does it do?
So it stops me being impulsive.
Really?
It helps you to stop doing this, which is happening right now. So completely losing my train of thought, just mid-sentence, and it just totally goes.
And it stops that, or it mitigates that slightly.
It's meant to, yeah. So when I get to the maximum dose, hopefully, that will help. And it helps with other traits, to be honest, Alex. And because I've got ADHD, I can't remember them.
Yeah.
I can remember how you got to a point now, and you did that. And you were like amazed that happened for the first time in your life.
Yeah. So when I'm out, so my therapy outside of
you've
therapy,
had that moment that you hear people say when they took the medication.
Well, I could remember something.
Oh,
So I'll put a podcast on or music or whatever. My earphones are in, and I go out with the dogs every night. Very rare do I listen to what's going through me earphones, because that's my point where I just let my brain go.
Yep.
It just goes on every little thought possible. For the past 2 weeks, all I've been thinking about is what I'm saying in this podcast, and none of it will be said, and I'll not remember most of it. But the other week, I was out for a walk, and I can't remember it now, but I could at the time, and I'd went on this massive long tangent, and then it goes off on another tangent, and it's all linked, but I can never remember where it started, but I could, and that was the first time that's ever happened. And then the other day, I was out for a dog walk again. And for some reason I noticed the time, and I can still tell you now that it was 8:15. Like, how the hell can I possibly remember? Like, before ADHD medication, you've got absolutely no chance of that staying in my head.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Because I don't need it again, so it has to go. I haven't got the capacity. There's so much going on in there right now.
That's so true.
So I try and tell people it's like, if you think of thoughts as cars on a motorway, and there's just 100 of them going in all different directions. And when I want to try and get thought, I've got to try and hone in on a particular road and follow that. But it's very easy to then lose that again and try and get back. And one of the biggest problems is that once that goes, sometimes you don't get back.
Oh, no.
God, that's so frustrating.
See, I've never gone down the route of medication. But from what you've just said there, that's made me definitely think about it.
Yeah, well, you need to be diagnosed first, and then you'll get referred to a psychiatrist.
Yeah, cheers, appreciate that.
From that moment on with Jen, jumped through a couple of hoops with Bupa, and then met a guy called Miguel Montenegro, who also deserves a shout out. He was a great guy, really lovely. You met Miguel, did you so?
Yeah, briefly.
Yeah. So I had 8 weeks with Miguel, talking, a lot about my life, but also my family. So this was the first time that I really started talking to family about possibility of having a neurodivergent diagnosis. And autism at the time, ADHD, I didn't discuss ADHD with Jen at all. I actually scored quite low, not quite low, but below the benchmark on the standard scoring charts that psychologists use. I don't know if it's got a name. Julie, do you know? Fine. So ADHD at that point wasn't on the table at all. It was Miguel who spotted it. And he had ADHD, or has ADHD. So then the big thing for getting an autistic diagnosis, an autism diagnosis, is that you have to have had it from birth. So it's really important that you find that even now with, when I was 32-year-old, I had to find out if the traits and symptoms of autism that I have today, I had at birth. I can't remember last week. Yeah. So that was a challenge. And then when I was 2-year-old, I was really poorly with meningitis, and parents were told, you're losing your kid, he's not going to survive. So that also had an impact, because that could, at the age of about 2, have been a trigger for the symptoms that I have of autism. So they had to be able to rule out that meningitis.
Really?
Yeah. And so there's a 2-year period from birth to 2-year-old that they've got to now try and figure out, did he have any autistic traits at that point? Now, couple that with the fact that my mum, I think she definitely took it personally in some way, shape, or form. So her response to me was, James, there's nothing the matter with you, son. You're perfectly fine. You've always been a great kid.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, is, I suspect she probably feels a bit of guilt that she doesn't have to feel. She's missed it.
Do you know what my mum said about my ADHD? She said, you don't have ADHD. You were just sensitive as a child.
Yeah.
That was how she saw it. You were just sensitive. That was her way of seeing it.
Yeah.
So I relate to what you're saying there.
Yeah. I think there is a lot of guilt there for our parents that, they feel like they've missed something.
Yeah.
But they weren't the only adults in our life. And actually, what we know about neurodiversity today is completely different what we knew in 1992.
It is.
I wouldn't expect me in 1992 as a parent to pick it up with my child. Life was so different back then, so different. So yeah, my mum's got no reason to feel guilty at all, but she does. And that's a problem, because we don't want her to feel that way. So there were a lot of questions. Thankfully, my 2 elder sisters were very honest in their feedback about me as a child and how bloody awful I was, especially to them too. And I would listen to everything.
Yeah.
So I'd be transfixed, obviously hyper-focused on the television. But there'd be conversations going on in the background. And when Barney's finished, I would turn around and know everything that's just been said and recounted and ask questions. Who's this? Why have they done this? And that's a 3-4-year-old. I learned a lot about my childhood just from talking to family.
I bet that was probably quite an interesting experience to go through that, because I can imagine 95% of it you didn't remember.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I'm great. My sisters are 5 and 6 years older than me, so they had a good grasp, of me as a kid. And the school was really hard. I bet. Didn't really know who I was. So it's at primary school, a lot of time was spent with adults. And then secondary school changed a lot. So secondary school was a bit of an opportunity because I got to meet new people, a lot of new people. But again, just didn't fit in, from one friendship group to another. And, I'd be knocking about with them at lunchtime, knocking about with them at school. Just who the hell do I fit in with here? And that didn't change until I was 15. And so at 15, I probably made my first friend that I've still got today, Catherine. Catherine and Catherine, actually, both of them. And that was the first time in my life that I really felt like I fitted in. And that was a pivotal moment.
I can imagine.
Life changed a bit then. What were we talking about? School.
We're going to school.
So all at this time, no idea of being neurodivergent.
See, I think for me though, so you sort of touched on it. when you were going through school then, I remember having points of going, what's different about me? Like, I still remember that. Why don't I pick up on maybe the social cues? Why don't I quite fit in?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I ever questioned it in the same way that you did. But what I always got really wound up because I was always middle of the road in school, you know, C's and B's.
Yeah.
And I just didn't understand why. Like, why can these people remember more than me? Because that's what it all came down to. I just couldn't really remember. I'd be sitting in an exam.
Everything you revised last week gone.
Well, that was another, you know, revision's pretty difficult with ADHD because that needs discipline and a boundary. Well, it just wouldn't happen, mate. You know, somebody needs to make me do it for me to do it. So, you know, you say, right, James, your lunches are now revision sessions. Like, okay, I'm going to a revision session on my lunch, whatever it is, after school, doesn't matter. Yeah. If you tell me there's some revision, you need to go away and do that in your own time, that is never happening. Yeah. That's ADHD. So yeah, I was always middle of the road, always, you know, mediocre, never top of the class, and people just could remember things that I couldn't, and that used to drive me mad. And memory is probably the one symptom that really drove me to try and get this fixed, because it drives me mad.
But do you remember peculiar stuff?
Give me an example of what you're thinking.
So for me, when it comes to random things like, I don't know, maybe I from watching a specific TV program when I was in my mid-teenage years, I can now remember the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
No.
Really random things like that.
So there are things that I remember. I think we were having a conversation the other day about something really random, and you were just like, James, why is it that you know that? And that happens a lot.
Well, that's what I mean. Random things like that.
Pointless.
Pointless information seems to be retained somewhere.
Value, just seems
but
interesting.
The rest of the stuff goes straight out.
Yeah. Can't remember my kids' birthdays.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I had that with my mum yesterday. My sister has to let me know pretty much every year when my mum's birthday is, the niece and nephew, everyone. My sister's I'm fine with because I'm a triplet, so I just about remember that one.
I didn't know that about you.
Did you not? Yeah.
Maybe I did, but I forgot.
You probably forgot, mate.
I was just going to tell a story there, but I can't remember now. I was looking at you, Sophie, and there was something I was going to say. What were we talking about?
Remembering.
Weird and wonderful things.
Yeah, remembering. Was that it?
Yeah, you've got no chance at all.
Yeah,
let's move on. So that's what's really annoying.
Yeah, I know. But you just sort of
got to accept it now. So now I just let it go. Because before I would have got really frustrated trying to remember what it was. And normally, totally pointless.
Sometimes I find you can pull it back, and when you do, it's amazing. You get a buzz off
that. Yeah, damn right, yeah. But it just doesn't happen enough. So I take a lot of notes now, and I lean on everybody else around me.
Yeah.
What were we talking about? I say that so many times a day, but it's the only way I can get through.
Yeah, no, I relate to that. I delegate. And like even at work, so everyone in my team, the ones that have been with me for a long time, they know exactly how I work.
Yeah.
They know that if I'm typing on the computer and they're talking to me, I'm not listening to what I'm taking it in, I'm hearing, but I'm not responding. Yeah. And then they'll come back 5 minutes later, or as soon as I'm done, I'll then go to them.
Or I'll respond to them in my head. So I have conversations with people in my head all the time.
Yeah.
So Sophie found out from my sister that...
I bet you love that.
Sophie found out from my sister that I wanted to get married in Italy in 2 years' time. And because I'd had this conversation with Sophie. I hadn't. So in the head I had.
No idea.
Yeah, we've talked about it all in my head.
You put it to bed, had the conversation, it was happening.
I need to go and tell that person this, right? Okay, so that's it told now.
That's it done. That's put to bed.
And that happens a lot more. Yeah. But when you were asking earlier about, you said something about what's the biggest change, I think, did you ask?
Yeah. So what have you noticed in changes?
One of the biggest impacts that having a diagnosis has had is definitely on work. You were saying there about how you tell your team, especially the ones who've been there the longest, know you. I didn't know me. So, I've had a lot of problems in, even in DBS, especially around communication.
Yeah.
People would be saying, why is he so abrupt? Why is James being aggressive? And it's not happening intentionally. It's just, this is the answer. You ask me a question. If the answer is one word, all I'm going to give you is one word.
Yeah.
I can't. So empathy is something that we really struggle with. And I certainly really struggle with.
I get that.
Small talk is something that I've struggled with for a long time. And that's only just recently starting to change. Pointless. I don't care.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
So that's quite difficult when you're managing people.
Yeah.
So now knowing that, I can talk to people when I first meet them. And I'm a bit of a parrot at the moment. I tell everybody that I have autism and ADHD because it offsets a lot of anxiety. So I'm not immediately thinking they think I'm
that's true
rude aggressive, short.
Yeah.
But then it also does allow the other person to understand that I'm short in my answers because that's how my brain works. Where were we up to? These points all need to stay in because this is ADHD in life.
I do. We were talking about work when you introduced yourself to people.
Yeah, definitely. So the impact it's had on work is phenomenal. I've also now realised what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. So I think if I think just about Direct Business Group, where I am now, a lot of the projects that I was involved in or managed fell away as soon as I started trying to do them. Because that's not my strength. My strength is in the idea and the strategy around it. And I can process map something so bloody quick in my head because I'm off straight away. If it's a particularly complex one, then I'll write things down. But 9 times out of 10, I know who needs to be involved and at what point. Then doing it, absolutely not. So that's autism allowing me to process map. ADHD then does not allow me to then go and follow a process. Certainly not mapping it because I'll become hyper-focused on something and then I can't move on in the process. Or I'll end up off on a huge tangent because I've identified some element of risk in a process that now I've just got to solely fix this. And then you're fixing something that's completely different. So I am not the person to do. I am much better as the ideas man. Yeah. So that's been difficult getting to this stage in a career where that is my job.
You've done incredibly well to get there.
Yeah, granted, thanks mate, I appreciate that. But it's really difficult when you're trying to get into work if your main strength is ideas, because you are not going to be employed at 17-year-old for ideas. You're going to be employed at 17 to do things.
Yeah, very true, mate.
Yeah. So I struggled a lot. So I went to college for about 6 months max. I wanted to study biology, chemistry and maths, but the college I was going to, St. Peter's campus in Sunderland, it had just opened that year. It was at the end of my street. I didn't have to get a bus. That is where I'm going. And because it was new, there was a huge influx of students. Yeah. So they put up the grades that you needed to do certain subjects, and obviously the ones I wanted were on that list. So they said, you can't do maths, biology and chemistry here. You can go to Bede and do it, but that meant getting a bus. That ain't happening. So instead of doing those 3 topics and wanting to become a doctor, instead I decided to do English language, IT and psychology because they were 3 courses that I could do with the grades I had. I had no interest in any of them. So anyway, 6 months in, there was a huge student union over the road. I was getting £30 a week EMA money. I could get in the bar. I was only 17, but they never asked us Friday. So that was the end of it. I went off for my birthday in February, never went back to school, college. So you're going to prompt me then, mate, because I'm having a brain fog moment.
No problem, that's fine. Well, okay. Well, the point that I was interested in was, let's go through this, the keen sense of justice. Let's talk through that.
So there is a right and wrong.
Yeah.
So autistic people struggle with lying. So when we're not, I'm not saying I don't lie, but we struggle with lying a lot more than neurotypical people. If you do wrong, there is a consequence.
Yes. Yep.
That's just a given, and then there is a process for that, whatever it may be, whether it's criminal, civil, employment, at home, you do something wrong at home, you suffer the consequence. You can't get away from that in my mind. Right? Autism means that if you do something wrong, you have to face the consequences of that.
Yes.
So, I've got a better story for you.
Go on.
So I live in Sunderland and we used to have an international air show every year. And so roadblocks would be put in place. And when I was a kid, the roadblocks would be manned by a police officer and a soldier. Now, it's G4S or whoever, security guards. But back then it was a police officer and a soldier in uniform. And we got chatting to these 2 guys who were on a roadblock at the end of our street. So I then decided, probably it's day 2, I'm going to have to go out in my police uniform. Because obviously I had a police uniform. All the neighbours used to say I looked like Norman Wisdom. My auntie actually made it for me. It was tailored.
Have you got pictures of this?
No. There probably is some that exist. There will be some that exist. And a whistle. I was obsessed with whistles. I had whistles everywhere. So I'd rocked up to this roadblock in my police uniform with my new friend, PC, whoever he was. PC Smith. And then over his radio came a report that there was kids throwing stones at the White Lighthouse and police needed to attend. So I was like, get in. I didn't know where the White Lighthouse was.
But you're going to find
there was something down the bottom that looked like a White Lighthouse. So I ran down, me and my mate who wasn't in his police uniform. I was in my police uniform. And we found this group of kids near what we thought to be the White Lighthouse. And excuse me, have you been throwing stones at the White Lighthouse? And he's like, no, like in my police uniform. Why? Like, what? Because I'm working for the police. And he stole my hat and ran away. So they nicked me police hat and legged it. So I went back to my police friend that I just made in tears because my police hat's been nicked. And you know what, looking back now as an adult, I can remember the look on this guy's face. And I didn't know what was going on at the time, but quite clearly he was thinking, there is no chance I can report this because my mates are going to absolutely kill me. So yeah, that was a real sense of justice that went wrong.
I get that. I relate to that.
A lot of things like that happened when I was younger.
I think something that you said as well, we talked about it earlier, which I know that I do quite a lot, which is when you're talking to other people, navigating the conversations, and quite often pretending that you're aware of the topic and you can relate to it.
So that was more prevalent really. If I put myself into like a business networking environment, I hate networking. Right. So people would start talking about football, and I follow Sunderland, love my team. And
unlucky.
And, I like Premier League football, but if you start talking to me about specific players and what I do not know, because I can't store the information. Yeah. So I would just pretend, oh, yeah, great goal. And I'm talking about goalkeeper. So at that point, what I would do is just pretend that I know what you're talking about and just keep minimal input. Yes, no's, nod, great. Yeah, that sounds great. Whatever you're saying, fantastic. Yeah. Doesn't matter. I haven't got bloody clue. But yeah. So that's a masking. That's autistic masking. So that's one of the areas of masking that I've spoken to Jen about.
So you talked about masking quite a few times. Do you feel you could summarize that?
I'll try. Yeah. So autistic masking is essentially changes that we make to ourselves to compensate for our autistic characteristics that don't fit in with a neurodivergent society. Yeah. I think that's really general explanation, and there might be some inaccuracies in that, but generally that's what it is. So we basically make ourselves think, or certainly not think, but talk, and our body language and our mannerisms are all essentially forced. Yeah. So autistic people generally have a different voice. So my entire life, people have always said to me, James, why are you so posh? I talk nothing like my family.
Really?
Yeah, totally. So I get that a lot. Why are you so well spoken? It's just the way I speak. And that's an autistic trait. Okay. So learning these type of things, it's not going to make any difference. But now I just understand. Yeah. So when people say to me, why? Because, certainly when I was younger, people would see it as a bit of a snobbish thing. Yeah. I'm state educated, very normal upbringing, one of 6 kids. So, we had a good life, but we weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination. And if you met my family, you'd see, we've got no silver spoons in our family. So then when I started talking like this, people were like, why? Who do you think you are? You think you're better than people. And it's not, it's just our talk. I can't help it. So that was an interesting revelation. What else were we talking about there?
Just changes you've had. Yeah, masking. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm still on a journey to try and figure out masking. Actually, I was with Jen last week. So the whole idea of unmasking is essentially being you.
That must be tough.
32 years. Yeah. So I haven't got a clue who I am. And that's something that I'm thinking about at the minute. And I was saying to Jen, I can't just decide that who I am really is who I want to be. I can't just say that I want to be this person, so that's who I am. Yeah. So how do I figure it out? And I think a lot of it's going to come down to relying on other people spotting changes in me. I've definitely spotted changes in myself. So we mentioned small talk. I will now find myself walking up to people in the street and having a conversation with them.
Strangers?
Yeah. So the other week I was in Roker Park walking the dog. I don't walk my dogs on a lead because they're just easier off the lead. There was a guy walking towards me and he had his dog off the lead. I had my headphones in. And I could see him going for his dog to put the dog on the lead. So I just stopped musing. I said, "You're okay, mate. My dogs are fine." We ended up having like a 15-minute conversation just about dogs, as you do. And at the end of the conversation, he said, "You know what, mate? Thank you very much. I really appreciated that." And it really, really, really felt good. Like I've got no idea what was going on in that guy's head, but he just needed to have that conversation.
That's brilliant.
And being able to do that means a lot. So I'm a lot more talkative than what I was prior to diagnosis and therapy and, well, treatment for anxiety, I think is definitely helping. What other changes have I noticed in myself? I think I'm a lot more emotionally aware now. So I had no emotional awareness at all. I would just, every emotion that I would feel generally just became anger and irritability. So understanding that now helps. But the secret, if somebody was to say to me, "James, what is the secret to getting better?" So James 4 years ago to James today, it's perception and the ability to understand that people perceive things differently is what now stops me from having anxiety.
Oh, explain that. I think I'm really interested by this.
I would have anxiety about something that I've said to you, and then I'm immediately going to think, "Oh my God, what's he thinking?" And we ruminate at that point. "Oh, he's going to hate me. He thinks I'm this. He thinks I'm that." And whenever we ruminate, it always becomes negative. But having the ability to understand that people perceive things differently eradicates that. Because you're not going to think about the same thing that I think about in the same way. You're going to see it as a totally different problem, scenario, situation than what I am. So if we take something like, I've told Sophie I'm going to go and do something and I haven't, right? It's not the end of the world. She'll get over it. Where in reality, Sophie really needed that doing because she's got so much on her plate. She's stressed. She's got, 2 kids running around the house and whatever else. So then it just allows you to then understand that people have their own lives and it's not everything through your lens.
Yeah.
I think I've done a really bad job of explaining that.
I don't think you did, but I didn't know what it was before you.
But honestly, if you want to get, if you are listening to this and you have anxiety and you want to get better, go and read up on perception. And I don't mean go and read like a medical book or something. Go and find something that you find interesting and that you can relate to. But just get a feel for the fact that people feel differently about the same things that you feel.
Yeah. So we've spoken a lot throughout this episode on mental health, ADHD, and your autism.
Yeah.
Do you categorize these together, or
no,
how is it?
Every single one of them is their own thing.
Okay.
You can have a mental health problem. And mental health, my God, that's so broad. I have anxiety, which is a mental health illness. I don't think that I have any other mental health problems. I'm certainly not aware of them. Yeah. I have autism. You can have autism and have nothing else. I have ADHD. You can have ADHD and nothing else. Yeah. They do have a relationship of sorts, which Julie will be able to touch on. And not in the sense that they're linked. They're just, if you have autism, you quite often have ADHD. If you have autism, you quite often have anxiety. So in that way, I'm not unique in the sense that I have all three, I think is what I'm trying to say to you.
Okay.
But they are completely different. And Julie will be able to explain to you a hell of a lot better than I can how autism and ADHD are different to each other and to mental health.
Yes, well, they're not mental health conditions. They're something that you're born with, and it's a different way of sort of perceiving the world. And you can be autistic and have ADHD and not have a mental health problem. Sadly, if you are neurodivergent, there is a greater prevalence of mental health issues quite often, not because of who you are, but society and fitting in the society and feeling that you don't, and all of those challenges.
It goes back to that understanding. So when you asked, at 32 getting a diagnosis, what's the benefit? I don't have anxiety because I now understand what my thought processes are and why they're different to other people's.
I get that.
Before that, it's why on earth are they thinking that about that? Yeah. It's so blatantly obvious what the answer to that is, but yet nobody else can see it. So then you doubt yourself a lot.
Yeah.
And, why are they so excited to go there? Like, I'm absolutely dreading that. We're going to go in there full of people or whatever it is, So that social environment, you're then able to understand what it is that you're feeling when you're going into it, so that you can just mitigate and you manage it, you accept it, you understand it's there, and then it doesn't become a problem, or certainly not as prominent. And that's the big thing. That's why I think getting diagnosed with, whether it be a mental health illness like anxiety, or whether it be neurodivergent like ADHD or autism, if you think there's something there, go and talk to someone, because you haven't got a clue what the benefit is until you start the process. And trust me, it's incredible.
Yeah. That's probably a good way to, or a good sort of topic to round this up on, which is, if there is someone listening to this that maybe was you pre-Instagram moment, what advice would you give them?
Well, I would say if you are me pre-Instagram moment, you won't be listening to this because you don't care about neurodivergent or mental health.
Yeah,
so that's the first problem.
Yeah, that's true.
Am I talking to somebody who has anxiety, autism, ADHD? Is that what you're asking?
Someone who maybe thinks
there's something amiss.
There's something, yeah.
I think what I would say to you is that nobody on this earth really fully understands the power of our minds.
Mm-hmm.
And once you accept that, and you accept that mental health or mental illness is an illness in the same way that a physical illness exists, then you can really understand why it's important to look after it, and do something about it. People go to the gym, people go to the GP. If you break a leg, you go to hospital. People suffer from mental health illness because we can't see it.
Yeah.
And because we can't see it, it's perceived to not be real. But it is real, and it's in the most powerful part of your body. So don't ignore it. Go and talk to somebody.
I love that.
And don't give up.
That's brilliant.
Thanks very much.
No, thank you. I really enjoyed that. Cheers, James.